Hello, everybody, and welcome to today's episode of Pursuit of Motion. It's aptly named Where is the Motion? Because I feel as though that's a question that you as a listener may have. I'd like to welcome you back to the show. Thanks for tuning in. And before I get into it, I'm going to start off with a new segment, Song of the Episode. So today's Song of the Episode, if you're not looking at the screen, there's a picture of it up here, but it's called Yosemite by Travis Scott, and it's got Gunna and Nav in it. If you're looking for a song, those are the vibes of the day. So, where's the motion, Adnan? A quick current life update. I moved from Nova Scotia to northern Alberta. It's a small town called High Level, and it's the furthest north community before the Northwest Territories. Something that my grandma always taught me when I was young, and one of the most valuable lessons in my life, is that where there's muck, there's money. And that's an old Scottish saying that essentially translates into the dirty work will always be available. And so I'm working in the forestry industry. I have a lot of experience in lumber. I love the lumber industry. However, I've actually moved into OSB production. OSB are like little wood chips that get pushed together with heat and glue into a board, essentially, that gets used in the building of houses. So it's nice to be part of a new industry. However, it's a big commitment. It's an hour drive to work, 12-hour shift, hour drive back. So 14 hours makes it difficult to pursue creative projects, and that's why there's been a lack of motion. Furthermore, we've had some issue. My recording gear, there was an issue with it. I had to leave it in Nova Scotia, and while I'm getting my computer fixed, I figured this doesn't mean the end of my pursuits. It just means I need to work on it with a different sort of plan in mind. And so I'm planning for the future. So my future plans, I'm going to get into my evil stance. I'm going to put on my mastermind hat, and I'm going to let you know what my big plans are. So I've been working on an album. It's my debut album. I've released projects before, but this one I'm really taking the time to write and think deeper about the content and the structure and the substance. It's going to be called Glory, and it's a Machiavellian themed album. So if anybody in the audience isn't aware of what that means, essentially it's an album that highlights the themes of glory, themes of conquest, themes of power, but not power in the dominant amoral sense where I'm coming out and trying to, impose my vision on the people. It's glory and power in the pursuit of something larger than self, the pursuit of something that's going to last. And so that's what I'm working on in writing it, and the beat selection is just crazy. It has a constant theme, and I don't want to speak too much about it, but all the beats are hard hitting, all of the lyrics are specific, and I've been having a blast writing it. So if you're wondering where the music is, beginning of September, there's going to be new music coming soon, and there's going to be so much coming out after that I'm not too concerned about taking this, short break over the summer. You got to adapt to your circumstances. That's ultimately what being a person is, let alone being a person of influence or being a podcaster or being an artist. You need to adapt. And part of adapting is understanding that there are periods in life where you can pursue your creativity, and there are periods of life where you need to work and be able to fund it and work on the underlying structure of your life, the foundation. I'm not in a position where my parents aren't funding my school, and I do not have a slush fund of cash. Everything's really funded by me and by my time, trading my skills for money, just like the rest of you, So if you ever have any wonders on why isn't anything coming out, you can probably take a good guess that I'm either working on the creative pursuit itself, or I'm working for the funding to put together the creative pursuit. And now, so you may be wondering, well, Adnan, this is pretty doomer. It kind of seems like you're telling me that you have no plans on any creating and putting things out to the people over the summer. We're not interested. Well, before you go that far, let me slow you down. I do have episodes of podcasts that have been recorded during April of 2024 with different professors. So there are going to be motion-oriented conversations. The first one coming soon is with Dr. Igor Shoykabrod, where we discuss the social contract, where we discuss reason, where we discuss politically and philosophically what took us from ancient conceptions of a society to this modern structure. How is it that this changed, and what is it that led us down this path, and how can we best operate within a society that has been allocated these frameworks, I guess. I know that's a lot, but to distill it, it's going to be a very great conversation that'll be coming out very soon, within the next week. And in the meantime, what I'm going to be doing is I've decided a good idea was being someone who likes to stay well read on current topics, someone who has an Economist subscription and likes to know what's going on in the world. I've decided it would be a good idea for me to record short episodes, maybe twice per week, that break down a set of things that I read during the week about global political, whether it be conflicts or just any sort of news stories. I will bring to you the news that I think is most driving, and in that way we both get a little bit out of the deal, because I'm able to continue creating podcasts that allow me to work on my diction and allow me to focus on important topics, and then you guys are still plugged in so that I'm not spending all of my time commuting to and from work, working, creating music, and leaving the listener out of the loop. So I want to thank you guys for even listening to this. You know, if you're here listening to this episode, you're so much farther ahead than the rest of the people that are all going to jump on the bandwagon in September, because I'm telling you, it's so much easier to support somebody when they got motion. And for those of you who remember the moves I was making last year up until about a month ago, it's pretty easy to create something of substance if you have a repeatable framework and if you have passion driving it. So I'm not super worried about spending this summer focusing on slightly different pursuits, because ultimately I know it will all come together into one fruitful outcome that, whether or not is the one that I have designated, is yet to be seen. But that's fine. That's not really how life works. Before I let you go, I decided it would be fun to answer a few personal questions. I'm going to pretend like these are questions that fans have sent me that would like to know, but really this is a GPT engineered list of questions that I think will allow me to expand to you guys, make clear how I think, and sort of make this relationship a more open one. So first question, what book has influenced my thinking the most and why? Now, this is a really difficult question because there is a long list of books that have had large impact on my life. But I'll say, if you're in a position right now where you're looking at your life and you don't know what to do, you don't know what your first steps are, you feel anxious, depressed, like you're surrounded by chaos, 12 Rules for Life by Jordan Peterson. That is the first book you should pick up. I truly mean that. If you're in a position where you haven't read that, but you need something to help move your life forward in a positive way, that's the first book to start at. Also, you know, a couple of other honorable mentions. The Prince by Machiavelli. It's a bit of a higher level read, so if you're not a strong reader, I wouldn't dive right in on that, but it's a fantastic book. It's a book that breaks down, essentially the themes of the album. It's a book that breaks down the pursuit of glory through cultivation of power. And we can make arguments all day about whether or not Machiavelli was arguing for immoral or at least amoral power methods, but that's not for me to talk about today. Next year, I have a scholar who is, Machiavelli is his core area of study. And so once we have that episode, you'll get a much larger look into what it is I'm trying to convey. But yeah, for sure, 12 Rules for Life. So describing a time where I overcame a significant change in what I learned. When I was working through COVID, so pre-COVID, I was going to school for audio engineering, and I loved it. I was making some bad decisions, but I was a 17-year-old living in the big city, free from my parents for the first time. When COVID happened, I came right back up north, because that old adage that my grandma taught me, I knew there'd be money, and the mills, the forestry industry did really well through COVID because of rising prices of materials and all that. And so it was a lot for me to step down and stop being a rapper in the city, because that's what I was doing in Edmonton, to stop being, I don't want to say a free man pursuing his goals, but to go from a student making music and focused on my thing to right back to the widget factory was a big change. But I think overcoming that challenge really came from figuring out what it is that I want to do with my life, what are my goals, and who do I want to become. Because when you're in a bad situation, if you can focus on the great thing that you're working towards, it makes that situation tenable. Whereas if I never had any plans or aspirations beyond working, and I knew I was going to be working away for the next 40 to 60 years with no breaks other than some vacation, it would have been a lot more difficult for me to stomach my life situation. And so when you get put in a situation that you are not enthusiastic about, to say the least, the key is to remember why you're doing it. What is the goal, your main motivation, what anchors you to your reason, I guess. Who do I consider a role model in life, and what specific qualities do I admire in them? So over the next couple of months, I'm going to have a podcast episode with his name is Tyler Ross. He's currently pursuing his master's. And I gotta say, this guy, if there's ever someone who's got his shit together, it's him. And I don't want to paint an angelic picture. Everybody is imperfect. But this is a man that convinced me to go to school. This is a man that has helped me understand my psyche and understand how I function. And this is a man that has led me through, I will say, adolescence to being a young man, for certain. And so it'll be very exciting to have him as a podcast guest. A small change I've made in my daily life that has a big impact on productivity or well-being: work out in the morning. You know, it's difficult to do that with my current schedule, but whenever I'm in a situation where that's a possibility, get up early, hit the gym. By 8 a.m., be ready for your day. Be showered, coffeeed, gym done. You're sitting there ready to go. Everyone else is just rolling out of bed. Your day will be so much easier like that. It's an open highway. You know, early bird gets the worm. But that's a small change that matter. Or also, you know, you spend $10 a day on stupid shit, and after a year, it's $3,600. And that's another thing I would say. Don't be spending money stupidly. Like, spend your money. Go buy the things that you want. I will never pretend to be a particularly disciplined person when it comes to money. I will invest in pursuits. I'll go have a good time. I'll go enjoy my life. But be aware of those stupid little things that add up that you don't need to be purchasing. If I could solve one problem facing the world today, it's a pretty easy one. It's war. I mean, in my opinion, all of the global conflicts that at least we're hearing about are driven by political actors. I don't think that these are natural conflicts. And obviously, I'm sitting in some kitchen up in northern Alberta, someone who's not pulling any levers of power. So don't come to me expecting a deep analysis of the thousands of years of conflict that have led up to these current large wars. But if I could solve one problem, it's like, we're looking at climate disaster. We're looking at a massive population crash. We're looking at systems like, if you look at the US, their economic system is built on a house of cards. When the people that drive that economy all age out and there's no more kids, the whole society is going to crumble. So I think there are big problems, and fighting each other over territory, or fighting each other even over thousands of years of angst, of opposition, like, it's a type of thing that I can't rationalize to you, and I'm not going to sit here and be like, oh, end all wars, but I am going to say, like, we're fighting over problems that aren't going to be important in 50 years when we're faced with larger issues, I guess. How do I balance my personal and professional life? I don't. A good buddy of mine told me once, his dad always used to say, you only got to work half the time, 12 hours a day. You put in your 12 hours and the rest of that is your time. Now, you know, if only life was so simple as that, right? But balancing a personal and a professional life is pursue your professional life to the point that it allows you to pursue your personal life. There's a Greek philosophical notion called pleonexia, and it's like wealth as a sickness. It's accruing wealth beyond the point that it is instrumental to you. And that used to be considered a bad thing. And that at this point in society is more or less a virtue. I mean, we live in a commerce-based society, so everybody's pursuing money. It only makes sense. But when you ask me, how do you balance professional and personal? Work on your professional up to the point that it can completely cover your personal. And then from there, keep moving on. And hopefully you're in a position like me where you're able to combine the personal and professional. Because as much as none of this that I'm doing right now has anything to do with my working in the forestry industry and making money that way, my personal belief is to create. And so hopefully we can leverage that into a professional, legitimate business one day. But I don't think that's today. One of the most important lessons I learned. So my girlfriend and I have traveled across the country 4 or 5 times now, and that's 4 or 5 days in the same vehicle, We've lived together for years, and a big thing about living with another person is that you need to have respect for each other's wants and needs. You need to know what the other person wants and go out of your way to do kind things for them, because a relationship can't be transactional. It can't be I'm doing something for you because I expect you to do something for me later. It's I'm going to do something for you because I know that's going to make your day better. I know that if I come home after work and bring flowers this Friday, or if after school I bring a coffee, or I know that if I come home and cook a nice dinner tonight, or whatever it all looks like, acts of service and quality time, I know for a fact that I will get it back, but not in a transactional sense, not in a you owe me, in the sense that you get what you put into a relationship. So that's the most important lesson. In my opinion, the key qualities that make an effective leader in today's world: they need to be charismatic, they need to have a pulse on the problems, and they need to be able to negotiate a vision on what the future is actually supposed to look like. And this is an issue that I have with Pierre Poilievre. I don't want to get too deep into the politics, but you can be charismatic, you can understand the problems, but if you're not going to negotiate that vision of what the future actually looks like, you're not a leader. And, in my opinion, we've got all sorts of political problems, in North America, well, really across the world. It's not even a North American specific issue. But I think the biggest thing is not just being charismatic and not just understanding the problem, but understanding how to solve that problem, and understanding how to solve that problem for the people that the problem affects. One of the biggest issues about governance in Canada, and this is something we've spoken about on future episodes with future guests, is that a lot of policies are designed not for the people, but to control the people. When you consider Indigenous communities up in the Arctic, for example, when you put a carbon tax on a community that runs entirely on diesel because they have no access to any other resources because everything's flown in, that's creating a policy like, yes, as much as the carbon tax has been a disaster and has been mismanaged, let's forget about all of the management and just talk about the pure concept of what it is. That's something that would work in Southern Canada and wouldn't work in Northern Canada because of the specific restraints geographically. Forget about culture, forget about technology, let's just talk geographically. And so that's why I think you need to understand who you're making the policy for. You need to negotiate that vision, because you can't just throw a blanket policy down and expect it to cover everything, right? How do I stay motivated and driven, especially during tough times? Remember what that goal is. And remember that no one speaking ill of you and your pursuits is doing better or more than you. This time that I'm spending to record this episode that you may or may not listen to is time that I could not have possibly spent hating on somebody. Not that I would have either way, but you understand the principle of what I'm saying. A busy person is focused on their own tasks. It's literally called mind your own business. Motivated and driven is not listening to the naysayers and understand your purpose. What is it that you do? I understand that God has given me an ability to rap and to orate. I know I can speak clearly, and whether or not the content is anything that people appreciate, that's up to them to determine. But you use your abilities to set yourself on a path that is going in a direction that you want to go. And then motivation follows. Because as long as your why is anchored, there's this great thing that has been studied that says, ask yourself why 5 times. And that's how you get to the bottom, the real sub-reason of your pursuits. And I think that's how you stay motivated and driven, is to find out what your why is. And my why is because I can, and because what would I do without it? What advice would you give someone who's just starting out on their journey to personal and professional development? Learn how to speak, learn how to make connections, get in good shape, figure out your aesthetic. There's no one correct look, but don't look bad. For example, I've got a mustache right now, and that's because we wear respirators all day around our face to protect us from the chemicals in the area. And so I'm shaven, but I'm clean shaven. I don't have scraggly gross going on here, and that's part of looking the part. You need to look like you're ready for that position. No one respects someone in pajama pants. You know, you've never ever heard anything prolific from somebody in pajama pants. Or if you have, you're an exception to the rule. So make sure you look the part, make sure you sound right, make connections, go speak with people, go ask people how they're doing, how you can help them. You'd be amazed. Like, especially if you're a young person, the thing about taking initiative is that young people don't do it. So if you really step up and show the world, show the universe what you're made of, what you're trying to create, the universe will reward you. You know, Dana White, the owner of the UFC, he said, if you're part of this generation, as long as you try, like if you're a real savage, you're going to run everybody else over. And I think that's completely true. So yeah, if you're starting out on your journey, I don't even think it matters what you do. Just do it professionally and do it like it matters. Learn from the skills, take initiative, and soon you'll find that you're going to be able to leverage everything you've learned into newer goals, newer pursuits. So just final thoughts, I want to let you guys know that this podcast and these musical pursuits mean the world to me. The thing about music is I've always been able to do it, and it's so subjective that whether or not somebody likes it, it's always going to speak to my soul. Whereas podcasting, I think, can be a lot more objective. And I think because it is a more difficult thing in a sense, because, it's more accessible. Anybody can grab a microphone and start a podcast, but not everybody can have a podcast that's substantive. And so that really motivates me. I would say I'm actually more excited about podcasting than music, as much as it's arguable that my music is miles ahead of my podcasting abilities. So I just want to say I'm going to keep this moving. Thank you for listening. You might have wondered where the motion was. Well, here it is. I'm still rolling. Send me your questions if you want to hear me speak about anything, suggest some topics, share your thoughts. My social medias are always open. In the bio, there's going to be a link to my music. It would mean the world if you check that out. I put a lot of effort into it. And yeah, thank you so much for your time, everybody. And Pursuit of Motion episode 4 coming soon.